Good evening, everyone. Just got so quiet. My name is Ellie, and I am the manager of public programs and residencies here at the Pocantico Center. And getting situated, it is my pleasure to welcome all of you to tonight's work in process showing with Whitney George and Shih-Yang Lee. Yes, absolutely. The Pocantico Center rests in Lenape-Hoking, unceded land of the native Lenape people. We honor the Lenape, past, present, and future, in gratitude and appreciation for their stewardship of this land for generations. Tonight, Whitney, Shih-Yang, and I are going to have a little conversation explaining and framing their experience of being in residence at the Pocantico Center and their collaboration. And then they'll present their collaborative performance, and then we'll meet back here again afterwards to talk more specifically about the piece, and we'll open it up to some questions as well. And now I'll offer some introductions. Whitney and Shih-Yang are artists in residence at the Pocantico Center as part of the Fall 2023 Collaborative Creative Residency Program between the Pocantico Center and the Culpeper Arts Culture program of the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, the Asian Cultural Council, and Composers Now. Since 2014, the Pocantico Center has been the location for two creatives to come together, explore the beautiful tranquility of the natural setting of our gardens, sculptures, and landscapes, while also finding a combined, inspired creativity leading to a new work. The collaborative, shared process is the key for an outcome that embraces the sensibilities of each artist and builds something expansive and new. And I want to say a thank you to our partners from Composers Now and the Asian Cultural Council for your support of this program. In preparation for the 2-week residency, the composers, chosen through a jury process administered by Composers Now, are paired with fellows from the Asian Cultural Council, in this case, another composer. Whitney and Shih-Yang met for the first time last Monday, 2 Mondays ago, and they've been living together here on campus in the Marcel Breuer House as they explored their combined forms and aesthetic approaches to conceive a joint project. They shared meals, conversation, and communal living as they explored new artistic pathways. And during the residency, they enjoyed the natural environment, and luckily we had really good weather for most of the time. And the historic buildings and the art collection at Pocantico that you may see has informed the piece that they created. They also had access to the DR Center, to this beautiful rehearsal and performance space, as well as other buildings on site to create and collaborate. Earlier this week, a videographer spent the day with Whitney and Shih-Yang and will produce a short documentary on the artist's journey together. The documentary will be featured in the opening event of the Composers Now 2024 Festival in late July at National Sawdust. And now I'm pleased to introduce our wonderful pair of artists in residence, Whitney George and Shih-Yang Lee. Whitney George is a composer, conductor, and educator. Her music traverses the effective terrain between tragedy and ecstasy, fragility and strength, bringing together romantically delicate intimacy and the spectacular darkness of the macabre. Her work has been recognized and commissioned by several institutions, including Del Arte Opera, New Camerata Opera, Fresh Squeezed Opera, and New York State Council on the Arts. George is the artistic director and conductor of the Curiosity Cabinet, a chamber orchestra formed in 2009 focused on interdisciplinary performance by underrepresented voices in the contemporary repertory. She holds degrees from Cal Arts, Brooklyn College, and CUNY Graduate Center. Shih-Yang Lee, an accomplished Taiwanese pianist, composer, and curator, works primarily in improvised music. As a performer, he has toured widely in Europe and Asia. He's collaborated with dance productions and founded music improvisation ensemble Ka Dao Yin to win prestigious awards, such as the Taishan Art Award, Golden Melody Award, and the Golden Indie Music Award. As a curator, he is known as a leading organizer for the burgeoning improvisation scene in Taiwan. And now to kick things off, I'd love to hear from both of you. Maybe we can start off by talking a little bit about your background and some of your influences.
Sure. So my background is pretty varied when it comes to music, but probably for the last 13 or so years, my main outlet as a performer has been a conductor. I found that I was starting to write works that were too large to be conducted by the ensemble themselves. So I started off sort of smaller works, pieces with dance during my undergraduate, and things started ballooning from that point. I tend to really find my place or feel like I'm at home when I write opera specifically and conduct opera. I find that there's a lot of connection between singers and myself when it comes to conducting and relaying information that's happening on stage. And it's kind of where I thrive, is where there's like so many different things happening. So, you know, obviously we're not going to be doing an opera. We don't have operatic forces here, but you'll probably notice some of my operatic inclinations, in any case, in some of the pieces that we present today, which have multidisciplinary sort of impact to them. We'll be doing some pieces that have video and some other performative things as well. But that's part of what I do in New York City. I'm a composer and conductor there, and do a lot of my own work in addition to works of living composers, where I get to help them make changes on the spot to their own works, which is really, really exciting. I give lots of composition lessons, so I find that like being that kind of third, I don't know, that kind of conversation element and trying to get revisions to a piece, to get a composer to get what needs to happen or with musicians is where I also find a good amount of my safe footing and my bit of home. So that's what I like to do.
My background is a classical music trained pianist, and then I get interested in improvisation. So I gradually did do a lot of improvisation and like to work with different artists in different fields. Yeah.
Great. Thinking about rituals and a sense of place, how has the experience of living here at the Pocantico Center for the last 2 weeks shaped your creative process, both collaboratively and separately, and how has that influenced as you get to know one another?
So I'm someone who is really interested in time and place right now, which seems very basic to say. I've been doing a lot of field recordings, which are about capturing sound at a particular time and space. So I'll oftentimes take a field recorder out, just a microphone that I can carry around with me that's pretty high quality, to take sound samples of the environment. So one of the things that I did here quite a bit was take sound samples. And sound samples not only of here, but also getting here. And the movement that is required from, you know, the city that we're so very close to the outskirts of, you know, like that major metropolis. So one of the things that I got to really dig into here is doing site-specific work. And of course, like, you know, your art is inspired by the things that surround you, and there's nothing short of stunning things around here. This peak fall, the foliage was gorgeous. Getting to just like listen to people take tours around, hear bits of history about the place from different sources, even just sort of in passing, was really quite inspiring, especially among the landscape of all of these beautiful sculptures that you know, are plotted around. And in fact, the sculptures were a main point of inspiration when we decided to embark on a collaborative project together. There are over 90, but I don't know exactly how many.
94.
94. There are 94 sculptures. I don't think I got to see all of them. I'm pretty sure. I got lost a number of times. That's also, I enjoy getting lost on purpose. It's very fun to do around here until you lose cell phone reception. You're like, oh gosh. Yeah, doing things that were very specific to here was one of my interests, and I've got a lot of very interesting field recordings, which you'll listen to as well today.
The center indeed gave us a sculpture map, yeah, but they also showed this some sculpture out of map, so we actually don't know where are those sculptures. Yeah, and here is just marvelous, and it reminds me I was in Taiwan, and there's a Aboriginal tribe, also in very high mountain, and I have to climb the mountain for more than 5 hours because you cannot take a car to go to the mountain, and they even don't have electricity. Yeah, and here is not so how to say primitive, but it reminds me that it's very quiet and you can see the big sky because we usually live in a city side and cannot see sky because all the big tall buildings. Yeah, so you can really see the sky and every day. There are 2 pianos in some of their buildings, some of their houses. This one, not included in this one because this one is they rent for this performance. So I appreciate that.
We had ample pianos while we were here.
And so during my stay here, I will kind of change to different place to practice piano. It's really inspires because very beautiful here.
Can you talk a little bit about the similarities and/or the differences in your work styles, especially both being composers, which is unusual with the composers now, ACC Residency. Usually it's a composer and a different artistic discipline. So I'm just curious to hear, as 2 composers, what that was like.
I would say a lot of my work as a composer is pretty solitary. I do a lot of thinking in silence, where I'm hearing things in my head. I was describing that I see a lot of music too, so not like colors or something like that, but I kind of see how the notes should appear on a piece of staff paper or the rhythms and stuff. So it's a combination of trying to pay attention to what's sort of like in my mind's eye, I guess, and what I'm listening to or hearing. And at this point, conducting really takes up the majority of my time when it comes to music. I had to give up instrumental performance because I couldn't do composing, conducting, and performing. It was just too many things. So I used to be a flute player many, many, many moons ago, and I switched over to oboe. But since I've kind of lost that physical contact with instruments, I find that I do a lot of my work outside of instruments and like actual sound. This is totally different than how you work, which you should probably describe. How do you work?
Because piano is my primary instrument, so I usually compose through improvisation. So I also like a lot of different genre of music. I think our music is quite different. But later you will hear a piece and you will listen a piece. We use a sand sculpture, but the piece also have a very similar mood, atmosphere.
Yeah, we're also I guess I'm a morning person. I can't believe I gotta call my mom and tell her. I guess I'm a morning person. I used to be a night person over here. So when we kind of were ships passing in the night sometimes, or the daytime, ships passing in some time or space. To find like a sweet spot that kind of worked in terms of being a morning and evening person was actually not, ended up being like the end of my day and sort of like the middle of his in a way, which is quite fine. It's just like when you gotta get into a rhythm of stuff. I would say normally, like as a composer, I generally do my best work in the morning. My brain is fresh. I haven't looked at too many scary emails before that point, right? I've had just the right amount of coffee, so I don't have like existential dread or anything like that. So morning is my best time. So doing like rehearsals in the evening was a little bit of like let me readjust, make sure I have enough energy to do that sort of thing. So just getting into a regular rhythm with someone that has kind of a different natural rhythm than you is already going to be a kind of a challenge. Yeah, a good one though.
Yeah, sounds like you managed to overcome it. Yeah. Well, I think we're pretty much ready to see what you've created. Is there anything either of you would like to add before to frame it or present it? Or should we just?
Do you want me to say something to that? No? Okay, well, maybe I should just say that you will see 4 selections of pieces that are auditory or sort of realizations of some of the sculptures that are here. 2 of them are the same sculpture and 2 of them are different. But I won't tell you who did what or anything like that. So we'll leave that to you afterwards.
And, we will share more.
We'll share more afterwards, but that'll give you good context.
Max, give us a minute to set up.
started hating Yonkers. Riverdale, fight that one, I won't make it through.
going to get set up with chairs and do a little post-performance conversation and Q&A. Give us one sec. Wow, well, that was amazing. Thank you again so much. I have so many questions. I'm sure you all do too. So I'll just ask a few to kind of kick off, and then we can open up to Q&A. First of all, I mean, we'd love to hear, I think, if you could share the evolution of this piece, and there were so many elements throughout the piece, the shadow play, the video, piano, the flute, all of the sights and the sounds. It's amazing, and I think it's really important to highlight again that Shih-Yang and Whitney just met 2 Mondays ago. They had very little information about one another ahead of time, and that's like kind of by design. The whole point is that when they come here to create, it's, you know, with not many preconceived notions or knowledge. So I just think it's incredible how much they were able to create in a week and a half. So I'm just kind of in awe of that. But would love to hear more, you know, about the piece itself and how it all came together.
Okay, I'll start, sure. The piece that started and ended, the set that you just saw, were both of our versions of a piece called Night, which is a sculpture here of a woman cast in bronze, and she's holding her knees.
I think we might have an image.
Yeah, we do have an image, but I'm going to continue talking about it. So when we first initially met, and it's true, we didn't know each other before 2 Mondays ago. There it is. That's Night. I really like this piece, and so do you. Obviously, because we decided to write a thing on it. But we kind of stumbled upon it by chance. I like to play or have chance procedures play into some of what I work on. And when we had 94 amazing sculptures to possibly pick from, we were like, where are we gonna start? I have no idea. So we took the sculpture map, and I was like, hey, it's a beautiful day. I'm gonna start at number 1, you start at 94, and let's meet somewhere in the middle. And you were like, well, what time? And I was like, I have no idea what time it will be. And we're like, well, what if we get lost? It was like very likely, and we were trying to avoid people touring around and stuff. So I ended up starting, and the piece with the train travel was based on a sculpture fountain here called Adam and Eve. But that's where I started in the whole lineup. That's sculpture number 4 on the map, if you're curious. Aha, there we go. So, and the only reason I actually found this is because I followed the sculpture map. If I hadn't, I probably wouldn't have gone down the stairs to see it, but I was really taken with this piece specifically. So, sorry, let me back up because I want to tell you all of the information all at once. Sculpture for me is very interesting because it's art and other art all at once. Okay, that sounds very basic or confusing, but like the sculpture itself is art, and then where you put it is also a part of the art, right? And so I became like shorthand obsessed with the idea of like, where have all the sculptures moved? Were they always meant for this particular location? I thought that one was really a very specific question. Like, I'm sure you've all like in your homes or whatever, been like, I have a wall and I need an art for it, right? Sometimes you happen upon the art and then it like becomes part of wherever your dwelling space is, but like there's a kind of give and take relationship that happens there. So the sculpture is as much about where, not only it, but where it's also placed, which is what I was kind of rambling about. In as much, because there's such like also, you can see this, this is a horse, but I also thought it was a dog initially, right? So, art is sort of whatever the person who's looking at it makes of it, right? So I was like, it's a dog. You're like, it's a horse, and it's also titled horse. And I was like, all right, okay, it might be a horse then. But, interesting, I wanted us to both compositionally take on the same subject to see or hear what the differences were. And interestingly enough, we kind of came up with some similar-ish pitch material a little bit in the pieces between our two. And the way that it worked is we presented our pieces in progress to one another for feedback. You like it, you don't like it? Obviously we understand that things are coming to being, right? So you need to be like, that's trash, right? No, so we're working on it, right? So, but it was I'm working on this. What do you think? Okay, that, and a lot of that happened right here. Yeah.
And the bed sheets, actually, she had this idea to use bed sheets, but finally she discarded.
Yeah.
And one day I came to a rehearsal space and then I just tried by myself, and because she also acts like a flashlight, and she also brought the foil.
Yeah, I rated the house for percussion instruments.
Didn't use all of them.
Yeah.
And one day I just tried, and I think I can play this. Looks quite interesting. And I thought, so maybe you can do it.
Yeah.
So I just asked her to do anything she wants.
And as a performer, I'm oftentimes I conduct and also narrate pieces while I'm conducting them. So I do I've got an Edgar Allan Poe setting of The Raven, for example, that I do. So I'm not a stranger when it comes to would you like to make tinfoil puppets in the back? I'm I'm game. That's absolutely what I want to do. The video that you saw was something that was I filmed, I edited, and all that other stuff. The footage, by the way, the audio is captured audio from transiting to get the instrument that you saw me play with. I never thought I would play the flute again, but welcome, you all got to hear it. And so that was, part of the whole thing was I'm gonna transit and then collect all of those things that I do in transit and make an art out of it. What surrounds the Adam and Eve sculpture fountain is the zodiacs. And there are a lot of other things that remind me of Grand Central Station. Even in Kaiket, there's the ceilings are done by Anyway, I was this looks just like the Oyster Bar. And it was well, it's done by the same person who did the Oyster Bar. I was oh, all right, small world. But the Grand Central connection became very apparent, that the idea that I could push a button that was Tarrytown to Grand Central Station. I was okay, cool. So I made the transit that sounds that we're so familiar with part of that landscape, but also the fountain has water in it too. So the idea is that the piece very slowly moves from train travel to Grand Central to water sounds. And the idea is you're not supposed to necessarily know exactly when you're in what environment, which is why it takes a while.
Did you want to also talk about some of the scores?
Oh yeah. So that's what Adam and Eve looks like as a score. Our scores look very different. Where's your score? It's under the piano.
One of my scores.
One of your scores.
Here, that's actually I improvise it and try to.
And then you write it down.
Transcribe it. Yeah, so it's it's from improvisation.
That's really beautiful, though. I'm jealous of the beautiful penmanship. Yeah, it's very good.
And the other score, just during the performance, the second piece, it's inspired by the sculpture called Atmos and Environment. And I try to because I try to use some a text, and also the sculpture looks like.
This is the second piece.
Sense of spaces, and I just thinking maybe I can use some symbol and sound like a text and to describe. So it actually needs the performer to use much imagination. So I have I have this kind of 菱形啊，怎么讲？ a kind of a diamond.
Diamond, yeah.
Yeah, and I just write the east, west, south. So when every time you have to imagine where you are, maybe you are in a certain country, and you present maybe what that country sound like. And for me, like a atmosphere, those are like elements, music elements, like dynamics, tempo, and articulation, something like that. I think that creates the atmosphere. And for me, environment is a more practical thing. So it's maybe in a kindergarten, in a school, in a garden, or in a how to say, maybe in a wall, or so I just give some like word, but you can replace those words. That once you have an image and you, so that demands the musician they need to have many vocabulary, music vocabulary, something like that. So the score just looks like sound like a symbol and some text.
So every time we did that piece, it was wildly different every single time. And as someone who is a slightly out of practice instrumentalist, trying to recall literally everything I've ever learned on the flute ever was difficult and a humbling experience. But it was also a really cool one to try to the piece hinges on doing these really quick switches and then setting up a new tone really immediately. And so when we were first beginning, the switches weren't particularly fast. And so just trying to, even though it's going to be different every single time, unlike the other pieces, like the first piece that you played, it's the same every single time. The flute piece that I did has a track that is fixed, so there's only so much of it that can change every single time. If you want to pull up the score for Night, which might be kind of interesting. So this is the piece that ended it. So there's kind of whispered text in these boxes that you can kind of go through. And there's rules that you need to follow. I'm a stickler. I decided that you need to do boxes 1 through 8 in order, but you can skip a box if you don't want to do it. And then after you do them in order, you can kind of sort of meander through them as you wish. Some of as you can see, there are some things that are very obviously notated, some chords, some things that don't really have note values to them, which give the player the ability to do their own kind of rhythm, and then things that are more kind of theatrical, create small metal stars. So those are sort of more, what can you do with extended technique, and so those bits where you heard the inside of the piano being played and stuff, those are that's probably that direction being realized there. So it different but the same. Number 2, radically different every single time. But and when we were thinking about presenting these pieces, we thought a lot about order, what kind of made sense. If we had indefinite time here, we would musically realize all of the sculptures. I would be really cool to let you listen to them while you see them. I think that'd be very neat. Personally, more projects that I wish to do here.
And it's just fascinating to hear how your musical vocabulary translated into the inspiration that you brought to you from the sculptures that you were connecting with. Well, I'd love to open it up to you all if anyone has any questions. The lovely Wiki's going to come around with the microphone.
Well, thanks, first of all, for a remarkable evening. This was great to see and hear. But I had a question, and I would also be interested in hearing the moderator's response to it as well, because it strikes me that Whitney's comment about the place element in the sculptures made me aware that I'm in an empty room donated by Big Gilded Age #1, in a building donated by Gilded Age name #2, and the patron's role in creating a forum for improvisation to happen and composition that's supposed to last for posterity, which seems to be at odds with improvisation, which is a sort of ephemeral, sort of time-based element. how do you think about creating a piece that is part of your evolutionary journey as a musician that is also supposed to last for posterity as a composition that can be performed by others who are not here? I'm fascinated by which piece is the piece, so to speak, because here you've both memorialized the directions to reproduce it, but nobody will ever see Whitney pouncing around the piano or you plucking the treble strings of the piano, for example. And in the creative process, how aware are you of the sort of the patronage role being brought here to do that, as opposed to what lasts afterwards? I'm just curious.
I don't have the direct answer to that, but I'm going to side answer. Just like when we bring, so the score that you're looking at, like, is the piece technically, right? But like, well, okay, or a recording of it is the piece, or a performance of it is the piece. But in order to like kind of test the capacity of the piece, like one of the things that I did is I gave it to you, and I was like, and you asked a bunch of questions. You're like, can I do transpositions? I was like, well, I didn't say no, so I guess yes, you can do transpositions here. So there's a lot of like, can you do it in a score, and like what is kind of allowed within the piece is part of the integrity of the document, I guess. And the only way to test the integrity of a document is to pass it to as many people as possible to have them try to break the document, which is fun. And frustrating. Also, like, it gets kind of like annoying and be like, well, then there are like a million things that are listed that you can and cannot do. But I only side answered your question. You're gonna have to redirect me on the main point of your question because I only side answered. The improvisational element as well.
As far as the improvisational element, obviously patronage, ever since the musical offering, et cetera, you've got people paying for artists to make stuff up on the spot. Sure. And we'll never hear that again. Yeah. And so as you're creating a piece that has, as part of its fundamental pillar, the notion that it's spontaneous and ephemeral, that will never be heard again that same way or situated exactly as it is here, how do you create into that to make something that both fulfills the artistic objective of the evening, but also, I mean, I presume, because you've written it down for reproduction, for performance, says something to be reproduced, to be reperformed, to be given again forward to new audiences. In creating, in composing, in incepting, are you creating for the now, for here, or are you creating for the future, or some blend?
I think because improvisation is about time and space and also a human being, because we work together, so maybe change another partner is also sound different. And but we also try, like we try several times, so every try you will know more. Maybe it's better, but actually it's changed all the way. So it's because improvisation creates something on the spot at the moment. Yeah. So I think it's also. So that's why it's maybe always can have a fresh feeling, and maybe sometimes we will struggle, but yeah, every time it's a different try, I think.
I'm less okay with it necessarily being different every single time, and so I'm a little bit more like, I would like this particular note, this particular rhythm, this particular pitch at this particular time with this particular instrument. And so I think to that extent, you're going to see improvisation much less frequently and less freedom in my pieces. However, as a conductor, I get the humbling experience of people deciding to go off book during my own stuff and doing what they want to, either by mistake or on purpose, but it's usually by mistake. Not oftentimes, but sometimes someone will make the mistake that was better for the piece than the thing that I wrote in the first place. And the important part is and I remember this whole, there's a whole bit in an opera where like the trombone player I was working with decided to just step up and do something completely different. I was like, David, that was completely the right thing to do in this moment. I'm glad you did it. I should probably write that down so that it happens every single time from this point forward. And so I think that we come from two very, very, very different schools. Even this is a little, not as specific as well, this is less specific than that, but more specific than your graphically notated piece. And it's maybe sometimes interesting to look at a composer's body of work and see how much control they wish to be in at a particular time, or how much control they're willing to let go of. I think it's an accordion a little bit. Sometimes I'm much more willing to give up control. Other times, much less. But like when I was working with you, you're a great improviser. I was like, oh, I should definitely give up control. Otherwise, I'm gonna stifle the thing that you do the best. So therefore, we get this, trying to write for the person that you're, writing for, so they sound good, right? We always want to look good, sound good, yeah.
Just a comment. I'm just enjoying listening to you talk about the work just now and reflecting on how it reflects so much of the nature of working in the unknown spaces and how human that is between individuals, but also in the process of creating anything. And I just love that, like when I've done some writing coaching and whatnot, I loved looking at an essay as just swiping away as if the words weren't there, but just seeing the structure reflected the person behind it and what their particular resistances were and their needs were and such. And so I'm just seeing that lens as you're talking just now about that. I'm like, oh, this is so informative about the individual's particular journey through some kind of change or escalation or control, letting go, being with the unknown. In order to discover something new. I mean, it's just, I love this part. It's really interesting. So thank you for.
Of course.
Well, I mean, just to echo what you said, I agree, and I think it's really interesting hearing the two of you talk about that collaborative leap you may have been taking, and working together, but also the coalescence that happened. And just to speak a little bit to your point about, patronage, so to speak, here we're really about the creative process, and that's what we saw tonight. And it's just been incredible bearing witness to the process that the two of you have had this, almost 2 weeks that you've been here, and the collaboration. And it's really a special opportunity to have that chance to do so. It doesn't necessarily mean that the work that is created here, who knows where it will lead, and that's kind of the part of the exciting part of it, I think. So I know we all look forward to seeing what comes next. So I just want to say a last thank you so much to Whitney and Shih-Yang. It's been such a pleasure having you here and getting to see your performance tonight. And thank you all for coming, and hope to see you again. And please join us in the gathering space for some cookies. Thank you.